the recent Asher's Bakery ruling has implications for free speech for those of all faiths and none. Heather Bellamy spoke with the Christian Institute to find out more.
Asher's Baking Company has lost its appeal against last year's County Court ruling, which found it had broken political, religious and sexual orientation discrimination laws when it turned down a gay activist's order for a pro-gay marriage campaign cake. I've got Simon Calvert on the phone, who's the Deputy Director for Public Affairs at the Christian Institute. Hello, Simon.
Hello there.
So why did the Asher's Baking Company refuse the order to bake the cake?
Well, they contacted us when they first refused the order, and that was 2 or 3 years ago now, and they asked for our help because they could see the potential for this to run and run, as indeed it has. The reasons for not producing the cake were very simple. The message on the cake was the message, support gay marriage, and the MacArthur family who run Asher's Baking Company are Christians, and they knew that they couldn't in good conscience do that. They didn't want to associate themselves with that campaign to change marriage law in Northern Ireland, because of course same-sex marriage is not legal there. So that was their reason, and the judgment which was handed down on Monday actually acknowledged what the MacArthurs have said all along, which was that they did not turn down the order because the man who ordered the cake was gay, or because they thought that he was gay. They toned it down solely because of the message on the cake. But what the court actually said was, the court still considers that a form of sexual orientation discrimination to not be willing to print a pro-same-sex marriage message. So their reasons were acknowledged, that they weren't rejecting this customer. I mean, remember that they had served this customer before, and as they've said, they would be happy to serve him again. It wasn't at all about rejecting a person. It was simply about not wanting to be forced to be associated with a particular message. And most people, I think, agree that nobody should be forced to be associated with a particular message if they strongly disagree with it.
Is this the first ruling that's interpreted the law in that way, that it's discrimination when it's about a message, not just a person?
It is, and that's why there's been such a huge public reaction against the ruling. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that public sympathy is overwhelmingly on the side of the MacArthur's family. Obviously, there are many people who agree with their Christian faith and agree with their views and feel supportive of the family for that reason, but there are many others who don't agree with their faith, who don't agree with their views about marriage, but who still think that they have been treated very badly. Peter Tatchell, the gay rights activist, he has spoken out very publicly in their defence. Having initially actually supported the case against them, he changed his mind, and he realised that this case had huge ramifications for free speech for everybody. As he said, and as we've said throughout this, if you force a Christian baker to print a pro-same-sex marriage message on a cake, and by the way, the cake wasn't for a wedding, it was for a campaign stunt. If you force a Christian baker to do that, he says, well, maybe you can force gay bakers to print anti-gay messages. We took advice from a QC who confirmed that if this ruling stands, there is potential then for example, a Muslim printer to be told that he has to print cartoons of Muhammad. Now, that would be profoundly offensive to him, but on the basis of this kind of reasoning, the logic would be that he would have to do that. Or a Roman Catholic baker would have to print a cake with a message saying, support abortion. And again, I think the vast majority of the public think that that's so offensive to any idea of freedom of conscience and freedom of speech, to use the law to compel people to help promote campaigns that they completely disagree with. And that's why there is so much public sympathy for them, and that's why the ruling has been condemned so widely in the media and beyond.
And time for part two of our interview with Simon Calvert from the Christian Institute, and Heather spoke with him to find out what the next steps are for Asher's Baking Company following the recent ruling.
Religion is a protected characteristic in equality laws. In what way does the law ever protect religion and people of faith in practice, not just in law?
Well, I want to say it does protect them. I wouldn't want to paint too bleak a picture that Christians always lose these cases, because they don't. I mean, the Christian Institute has been supporting the MacArthur family through our legal defence fund. We've been running a legal defence fund now for 10 years, and over that 10 years we've raised and spent something in the order of £3 million on cases which pursued the defence and promotion of religious liberty. And we have had some notable successes, and we've even had cases where you didn't necessarily win the case, but what you got out of the ruling was a statement of principle which did help to advance religious freedom. And so we have helped Christian street preachers who have been wrongly arrested and wrongly prosecuted. We've helped them to not only get the charges dropped, but also to sue for damages for wrongful arrest and unlawful imprisonment. We have helped people to defend themselves against accusations from regulators that they were being somehow homophobic, and we've been able to invoke various exemptions and protections which exist within equality law, which protect the ability of churches and Christian organisations to operate in accordance with their faith. So there are protections. You know, quite rightly, Parliament inserted exemptions. We had to fight, I have to say, as Christians to keep and extend some of those exemptions, but we got them. And it's the same for, you know, if you run a Christian conference centre, for example, you can provide your services only to those who share your Christian faith if you want. And again, that too is protected in law. So there are protections. But at the same time, when we've been involved with the big three significant cases when it comes to the clash between religious liberty and gay rights, and that's the case of Lillian Liddell, the Civil Partnership Registrar, Peter and Hazel Mary Ball, the Christian B&B owners, and now the MacArthur family in relation to the Ashes case. And on those cases, certainly the outcome of those cases has been very disappointing and quite damaging when it comes to religious liberty.
So what now? Will this ruling stand, and all the concerns of how the implications for everybody else, like Peter Tatchell's concerned, is that inevitable, or is there going to be another challenge to this ruling?
Well, the family and the Christian Institute and their lawyers, we will sit down together. We will take advice from the lawyers on what options there may be for appealing the case, and then the family will want to make their decision from there. So I think that's probably a process which will probably take a matter of weeks to decide. It's obviously a big decision. We'll have to wait and see what the advice is from the lawyers.
What would be your best hope for the future in terms of a change in the law? What would you want to see going forward?
Well, we've long argued that the law, equality law, ought to be amended in order to reasonably accommodate religious and conscientious belief. Reasonable accommodation is a concept which is recognised in law in other jurisdictions around the world. It would be a simple way of providing a better balancing act when you have clashes of rights. It's worth remembering that, for example, Baroness Hale, who ruled against Peter and Hazel Mary Bull on the B&B case, later gave a speech where she questioned whether the law, equality law, had got the balance right when it came to dealing with people like that. And there is a body of opinion that thinks that you could amend equality law to require the court to do a bit more of a balancing act. It wouldn't mean that the Christian would win every time. It would just mean a bit more consideration will be given to their rights and to their freedoms and to their conscience. And I think that there would be broad support for something like that, a kind of a rebalancing of equality law. So that is an option which would certainly be open to politicians both at Westminster and at Holyrood in Northern Ireland. But obviously there is also the possibility of an appeal to the Supreme Court, or indeed even beyond that, where judges may make a ruling which better protects the balancing of rights. But the fact remains that, as everyone who's looked at the masses of media coverage of the Ashes case in the past week will know, there is broad public sympathy for the idea that when it comes to the specific issue of whether you should be forced to help promote other people's opinions, people think that that's not right. So on that very narrow, precise issue of coercing other people's consciences to promote other people's points of views, I think there will be strong support for any change to the law which would help to prevent that kind of situation arising again in the future. And not just for Christians, obviously for people of whatever views.